Hey guys, Mark with Think Insurance, and today we're going to talk about alcohol and how it relates to insurance and go over some of the statistics of what the most common people, age range, male versus female, and companies and how they react to DUIs, OWIs, or whatever you want to call it. We'll tell you right up front that as far as insurance goes, it doesn't matter what you call it. They're all rated the same. OWI, DUI, OBI, or whatever the case is. There's like 5 different names of them, and they're all different names in the computer system, but they don't really affect the price a whole lot. Operating while intoxicated, or a MIP, is a little bit different, but pretty much essentially the same situation. It involves alcohol. And those are considered what we call a major violation. And those major violations determine whether they are involved in an accident or not. Before we dive into that, let's go into some of the statistics of why it plays a huge factor in your insurance premiums. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this information, this channel is all about helping you save money on insurance, finding the best coverages so that you don't get ripped off. But if that is something that you're interested in, definitely subscribe. Don't forget to turn the bell icon on so you don't miss any future videos. If you want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is hit the thumbs up. That helps the algorithm on YouTube determine that this is something that people should watch. So a lot of the data I'm taking from was a website called Bankrate, and they did a study in 2021 for the statistics of drunk driving. I've got a few notes that I've made, but essentially 28 people every single day are killed because of the drunk driving, every 52 minutes according to the NHTSA. That's more than 10,000 lives each year that are involved and taken from drunk driving. Now, the states have governed and allowed insurance to put certain pieces into play that kind of prevent that, and that's one of the reasons that the age limit for drinking in most states has gone to 21. And I'll show you that here in some of the statistics so that you can see just exactly what we mean by that. So it averages over $44 billion per year in fees and courts and all of the stuff essentially for drinking and driving. And one of the pieces that we're going to go over some statistics is some of the previous years. And I'm just going to go to 2019 because it doesn't really make a huge difference. We're going from about 29%. It's dropped down to about 28% in 2019. And then we'll dive into this year as well just to compare. So in 2019, there was 36,096 traffic fatalities. Out of those traffic fatalities, there was 10,142 that involved alcohol. So there was about 28% of all of the accidents were DUI or alcohol related situations. And the biggest factor was age, where it used to be higher when you were 16 to 20, but because we've implemented that law where most states require that you're 21 or older to drink, it's now gone down to about 15% is that age range. When you turn 21 to 24, that's the largest. That's also one of the reasons that you see insurance when we talk about on this channel, if you're 25 or younger, you're considered a high risk. It's not just that you have more claims, but it also involves the alcohol situation as well. So 27%, that's the largest percent out of all the age ranges that have the most fatalities for alcohol impaired drivers. And I'll just quickly rattle off the other numbers. So 25 to 34 is 25%, pretty close. So if you're 35 to 44, you're 21%. If you're 45 to 54, you're about 19%. 55 to 64, you're 15%. 65 to 74, 10, and then it drops down to 7. Now, the most interesting fact that I noticed was if you're a male, you're 4 times more likely to have an alcohol related incident. That's crazy. And that's one of the reasons people are always frustrated. Like, why are the women drivers cheaper on insurance? That could play a fairly large factor depending on the area that you're in. So it's not across the board an even playing field. It could be that you in Detroit might not be a high risk because there might not be a lot of alcohol related things, but you move to California or Texas and you have certain zip codes and counties, we call them areas, they're territories, and those may have high sub areas that have a lot of those claims, and that's where those insurance companies are going to increase the rate based on the age, the driver, whether they're male or female, and whatever the situation is, depending on the state, because some states have kind of changed the laws where you can and can't rate some of those different factors. So like I said, the area makes a difference. California is the second largest, or percentage-wise, they're the most fatalities due to DUIs and OWIs and alcohol-related incidences, where, as you may have guessed it, Texas is the largest number where they have the most of those fatalities, mainly because of their size. But in general, California and Texas are going to be the two that you would expect to see it the most. So the crazy part is, if you look at this over the last decade, the last 10 years, the actual number of deaths and DUIs and all of the alcohol related things have gone down. We're actually at a low right now. It seems like all those numbers, it seems kind of crazy, but if you go all the way back to the mid 80s, it's dropped about 44%, mainly for a few reasons. We've now got Uber and Lyft, so we have a way to get around that's not as expensive. If you spend $80 at a bar, you're obviously had a really great time and you're just off the wall fun, or not fun if you're the angry drunk, and you're going to spend the extra 20 bucks to get into an Uber, or your friend's gonna pay that bill to make sure that you drive safely. Where in the past, we would kind of tell ourselves, or people would tell themselves that, hey, I can drive, I'm good, I'm just down the road, or I'm okay to drive, I don't think I had enough, or whatever the situation is, where even a 180-pound person, if you have about 4 drinks, you're more than likely intoxicated for the whole night. Usually it's 1 or 2 based on your weight. Obviously the car that you're driving, they've gotten a little bit safer, so the actual fatalities themselves have gone down. When you have pretty much every vehicle, if you don't have a 5-star rating or better, which is the max, you're just not gonna get as many people purchasing that vehicle. So at the process of this all, we're gonna dive into how you can avoid some of these things and some different situations and some costs that it would be for insurance. But let's first talk a few things about how the drunk driving actually impacts, or a DUI impacts, your actual insurance. Apart from having to pay $10,000 to $15,000 from the government, you're gonna pay a lawyer, you're gonna pay fees, you may have gone to jail for the night, and you're gonna lose your license most likely. You'll have to get it back in a temporary, and there's a lot of fines there. So if you haven't gone through this, or if you know somebody that is looking just at what is possible, that alone should scare you enough. The cost of your entire vehicle, or a really nice vehicle, would be the cost of making one of those mistakes. The cost to insurance can possibly double. So giving it an example in this article, they use a company, Travelers, which is one of my favorite companies. They're actually a really good company. And the cost for a DUI with them, it average annually of $1,428 a year, goes to $2,442 a year, which is pretty expensive. Now, that's just one company. In most cases, it can go anywhere from $800 to over $3,000 per year in additional. Now, there are some companies that are better fits for if you do have a DUI, because this may sound like you're the worst person in the world, and you're not. You either made a bad choice or made a mistake and it happened, right? Now let's move on and let's go forward. In most insurance companies, they're not gonna shine away from you, and they're not gonna be like you're the worst person, because if you look at these numbers, it's not that uncommon to have something like that happen. Keep in mind, if there is a death related, you're looking at that top end of that range, because now we've got medical injuries versus just having the ticket itself. And in most cases, when you have an accident, the one or the other choice is given. So if there was a fatality, they're gonna overpower the ticket itself. And so there's gonna be a big issue. Some states and most states will actually have that stay on your license for a minimum of 3 years. In most cases, it's 5, and some states go for 10 years. So you may be wondering, it's been 6-7 years since I've had this problem. Why is it still on my record? It is because those states that you're in may allow those companies to go that far back, almost as a penalty to remind you that it's something that you don't want to have happen. So the best way to prevent this is to, 1, talk to your kids. If you're a parent, if you're watching this, share this video with them. Make sure they understand not just the cost, but the effect that you can have on someone's life if you were to either injure them, or if it ends up being fatal, you have to live with that mistake that you've made for a lot longer. You may even be looking at jail time at that point. The other part is we've got rideshare. I mean, almost anybody can get an Uber or Lyft. You can borrow money if you don't have it from somebody. I'm sure if they see you're intoxicated and they think you're gonna drive, at which point it's gonna be fine. If you have credit, Uber, Lyft, any type of rideshare program that you can get into, I would recommend, and most people will say, that has really made all of the difference. Sure, it might be $25 to get there, and then in the morning you gotta pay $20 or $25 to get back, but $50 versus $15,000 plus an additional $3,000 for 5 to 10 years is a huge difference in value versus the decision that you're making at the time. They obviously have little scooters now, that's become a thing, although be very careful because if you're on any motorized vehicle, it can be a lawnmower, it can be a scooter, it can be a car, you can still get the DUI, and if you're too intoxicated, then you obviously could go off of the sidewalk into the road, and there still could be some issues there where you don't want to have those things happen. Spending the night is what we used to do. We would just get a little bit crazy sometimes and we knew we couldn't drive, so we would spend the night. I did it once when I was married. I'll never do that again. And my wife was about to kill me and I thought I was gonna be single for the rest of my life. If you're in that situation, it's worth having the argument the next day and having to overcome that than it is to trying to drive. Or if you have a spouse, they might be upset with you and have to get you, or your significant other, but it makes more sense to either have that situation happen than it is to go the other route. And then the last two things that they recommend is plan ahead. If you're going to go out drinking, maybe you have one designated driver, otherwise they recommend just don't drink. Overall, if you're going to go out and have a good time or get a little crazy, plan that ahead. I mean, it just makes sense that if you're going to drive, you're going to drink, either have somebody that is designated to drive or just know that you're going to leave your vehicle where you have it and just go with Uber or Lyft. Otherwise, get the large vehicle, share it with 3 or 4 of your friends. You guys can have fun. If you all want to go off on your own at the end of the night, that's perfectly fine. Then you have to output those expenses. That's one less drink that you get to have at that bar or wherever you're going for the night. So going forward, some options that you have to look at if this has already happened to you, you may want to watch my insurance discounts video that might help overcome some of those costs. It's gonna get expensive, but if you can find companies that are better fits for you, not all companies are against when you have those. I've actually seen some companies that have gotten cheaper, oddly enough, when somebody has had a claim or a ticket or even a DUI I've seen from time to time, where it's really making you fit in their model better, which is kind of odd. I know it doesn't make sense. It's like, why would it get cheaper? But I've seen it multiple times with multiple companies. I'll put a link below, so if you guys want to do a quote with several companies, you can check some options out there. Otherwise, don't forget to hit the bell icon when you subscribe. I am Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.